in dance there's such a thing as motion capture,
Yes.
where it is a completely new field of creating dance in virtual rather than actual performance.
Yeah.
Steve, over to you.
Yeah, I got a call a couple of years ago from Victor Schonfield, who was famous for bringing Sun Ra to England for the first time, and Ornette Coleman, managed AMM Music and John Stevens and various people. And his call was about his frustration at the obsession that our tiny, tiny ghettoized middle-class world has with Cornelius Cardew's music. He felt that people had just gone on and on about Cornelius, and one of the things Cornelius did was a piece called Treatise, which looks very beautiful. It's a huge book, and it's sort of based on music notation, except that things keep happening to the notation, so it's impossible to play it as notation. And in a way, it's a sort of critique of the idea of notation in itself, I think, but it constantly leads you up the garden path. You get, I was going to mix metaphors and say up the garden path without a paddle, but that but you know what I mean. Yes. You think, oh, I'm going to follow look, there's some dots here, they could be staccatos, I'm going to do that. Oh no, now they've turned into lines and now they've become a stave, what do I do? And the whole piece is utterly frustrating, and I find it actually not at all useful in making music personally. But the fact that everybody was so obsessed with this stuff means something, and I think what the point Victor was making was that he felt that the work of John Stevens, who in contrast to Cornelius wasn't posh and tended to work much more verbally and practically. John Stevens for years and years and years did workshops every Saturday morning in Ealing, and with very mixed ability groups. And actually what came out of that was a book called Search and Reflect, but this was very much after the fact, as somebody already said, that you said, Michael, that scores come after the fact. John Stevens developed amazing workshop pieces, and the notation was thought about afterwards. Actually, the book is fantastic. It's extremely clear, completely the other way to Cornelius's scores, that actually John's book is absolutely, utterly comprehensible by anybody, whether a musician or not, whereas Cornelius' stuff is not comprehensible by anybody, even if they're a musician. So I was just thinking about those aspects of notation, really. But also the fact that it is like Cornelius's work does kind of snare you somehow, at the same time as repel you. And maybe that's why people are constantly obsessed with him. But I think we should all move on and look at John Stevens. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say, really. Oh, no, there was just another thing about people who work with stuff that's already recorded, like John Oswald, who got a knock on the door. Are people acquainted with John Oswald's work? He's a Canadian. Well, he started out as an alto saxophone player, and he worked in a cassette duplication factory for a bit and started messing with cassettes, slowing them down and stuff. And he ended up cutting up Michael Jackson. And you're not really supposed to do that in Canada. He's Canadian. And he got a knock on the door from the PRS who said, you must destroy all your cut-ups of Michael Jackson, all the CDs, all the tapes, everything has to be destroyed. And he went out and bought the next Michael Jackson record and read an interview with Michael's sister, who said, Michael's amazing, he writes all this amazing orchestral music, you should hear this new album. And John put it on, and actually it was Beethoven, conducted by Leonard Bernstein. And there was no credit anywhere on this record for the bit of it was an overture to something, I can't remember what it was. So even Michael Jackson's sister thought that he'd written this piece of music, which was in fact Beethoven. That's all.
You've probably taken us full circle with that anecdote.